All right. Welcome back to episode 199 of the Comic Watchers. I'm flying solo again this week, but that's okay because I have two great guests. This evening, we're going to be talking about Ahoy Comics, and joining me are Tom Pierre and Stuart Moore, two of the founders. So let me go ahead and bring them in. We'll find out about more about them and find out about Ahoy and how they're celebrating 5 wonderful years. Hi guys, how's it going?
Thanks. How you
doing? Good.
So I know we've talked before in the past, but before we get into talking about your work with Ahoy, tell us a little. How about taking turns and telling us a little bit about your experience with reading comics and the work you've done so far in the industry that led up to Ahoy Comics.
Well, I'll start, I guess. I just started reading comics like in a different geologic age. It was a long time ago. And my first Marvel comic was like Fantastic Four #6, where Submariner and Dr. Doom teamed up to fight the FF. And I thought Dr. Doom was the Submariner because he looked like he was made out of metal, like a submarine. So that was a long time ago. But my first regular job in comics, professional job in comics, was at DC Vertigo, and I started that job about 2 months before I met Stuart, who came on the staff, and he and I worked together almost the whole time I was there. And so I went freelance as a writer, and I wrote a lot of DC comics and some Marvel and a few other ones. And about 6 years ago, really, almost 7 years ago, we decided, two friends and I here in Syracuse, New York, decided to start a comic book company, which had we known how much work it would be, we never would have done. But we're glad we did it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm glad, I'm grateful for our ignorance at the time. But and it was great to get back together with Stuart and a bunch of other people I'd worked with in the past, freelancers, Elisa Quitney, Peter Milligan, Vertigo names, and new names, new people I hadn't met before. And it's been exciting and it's been rewarding, and I'm really proud of the material, and I'm very happy to still be here 5 years later.
Well, I have a confession to make. I've never read comics. I don't even know what they are. This guy called me up. And he seemed to think I was his old friend. and then I remembered, like, and now my office is just full of these things. And I don't know what to do with them. They're all over the place. But as long as I'm here, I'm happy to talk. I don't know. What's that?
You're not him?
I'm not him. I'm like, I Don Drapered him. I just took his identity.
I wasted 5 years.
That's right. You thought I knew what I was doing, right? I don't know.
I did, actually, until this minute.
Until right now, right on this very program. Yeah. This is when it all came apart. This is when it all just blew open. Yeah. No, yes, I worked with Tom at Ahoy, at Vertigo, now at Ahoy, and before that I was a book editor, and for the past 20 years I've been mostly a full-time writer, mixture of comics and novels, most of them superhero related. I had a Marvel novel called Into the Dark Dimension out earlier this year, so that was fun. But yeah, Ahoy's been it's been really exciting for me. It's been really fun for me because I've gotten to do a lot of things I've never done before. Like I do on a freelance basis. In addition to the writing I do for Ahoy, I do operations for them on a freelance basis, and that means I deal with distributors. I keep the schedule. I have all kinds of contact with parts of the industry that I knew about and I knew people who worked in, but I'd never really done. And that's all kind of fascinating too, in addition to the writing, which is what I really love.
So, kind of starting at the beginning. I know you guys were talking about how you worked together at Vertigo. What was kind of the idea that you guys, said, okay, let's join together and make our own publisher
Well,
and publish our own books.
Ohio was started by Hart Seeley, the publisher,
Mhm.
Frank Camuso, the chief creative officer, and me. And this was in like January 2017. We started to meet, have like meetings, and figure out what we were going to do. And that was about a year and 9 months before our first comic actually hit the stands. It was The Wrong Earth #1, which came out in September 2018. And Captain Ginger came out very soon after. That's Stuart's comic about a starship full of cats, which is cool. And
Yep.
so we just started meeting with people and seeing who we could bring in and who would help us and who would be good for us. And Stuart was absolutely one of the first names I thought of. We always worked great together, and we're good friends. So it's terrific.
Yeah, even one of the secrets to Ahoy is that especially if there's a scheduling problem or a creative problem of some kind, often Tom and I just get on the phone and figure it out.
Yep.
And that
Right.
that's a level of ease and sort of freedom from like second guessing that I've very rarely had in a job like this. It's a very smooth operation all along. We have a really, really good staff spread out kind of around the world, and most of them are full-time or freelance like I am, but they're all really good at what they do.
So let's kind of talk about the books. I mean, you mentioned The Wrong Earth and Captain Ginger, and I know I've read both of those, and I love them both. So, Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about Wrong Earth and the other books that you've written for Ahoy?
Okay, yeah. Well, Wrong Earth and Captain Ginger both were among Ahoy's first publications. So in the 5th anniversary, we're reviving both of them for like these 2-issue specials, and along with a third book that has nothing to do with 2018 called Acid Chimp versus Business Dog, which I'll get to. But The Wrong Earth is it's almost I don't know, it's kind of, I don't want to sound highfalutin about it, but it's a bit of a comic book memoir for me, because when I started reading comics, they were pitched at kids, superhero comics pitched at kids, so that the heroes were all like upstanding and Boy Scout-ish and helping people cross the street, and they just really wanted to uphold the status quo and have like keep the peace, and of course by the 1980s or so, that wasn't what they wanted at all. They wanted to stick it to the man, and they might get a little more violent just for kicks than heroes used to. So I was sort of ruminating about how you could look at a hero's chest symbol in 1965, and in 1990, the hero would have the same chest symbol, but it would have entirely different values associated with it than it used to. So basically what I did was with Jamal Eigel, who contributed muchly, the artist Jamal, we have the sort of 1965 version of a hero, 1966 version of a hero on one Earth, and on the other Earth, it's sort of the Ben Affleck era version of the same hero. And in the first series, they get trapped on each other's Earths, and they have to survive in this entirely different set of morals and values and circumstances and expectations. And Then we did a series where they get trapped on a third Earth together and to see if they can get along. And now we're pulling some other stuff. But it's been a dream to write it because I just love the subject matter and people are receiving it well, and the art is fantastic, and the collaboration with Jamal is fantastic.
Yeah, I would say all that comes through really strongly, and like you said, Jamal just brings so much energy to every page too.
Oh yeah.
And what I like about it too is it really moves along and it treats both characters with roughly the same amount of respect, even though you would think you might have more sympathy for the one you grew up with or something like that. But it really kind of like they're both heroes. They're both smart. Like they're both able to sort of think on their feet in different situations and figure out what to do. It's a really sharp book.
Thank you. So is Captain Ginger.
Captain Ginger. I'm wearing my Captain Ginger shirt.
It's so tasteless to wear your own comic.
I know, it's terrible. Captain Ginger was it was actually the first project I ever cooked up specifically for an artist. And that was June Brigman, who I'd worked with before. She's best known for her work on Power Pack at Marvel over the years. But I just knew she loved to draw cats. And there were a lot of there's a lot of imagery on the internet about of cats in space, but there really haven't been a lot of comic books about that. And we just put it together, and it's just I love writing it. We did 2 series. The second one got a little bit the pandemic kind of landed smack in the middle of it and interrupted shipping, and we went digital only on the book for a while, and that
And it went to the dogs.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It was literally out the dogs at that point, but yes, even further to the dogs. And fortunately, both volumes are in print and trade paperback. But we decided with the 5th anniversary coming up, I had an idea to sort of close off this cycle of stories and with a fairly self-contained adventure that nevertheless gets to the heart of some of where the cats came from, how they came to be intelligent, took over from the humans who have all died out on this starship that they barely know how to run, and at the same time gets into the mystery of Captain Ginger's father, which has been running through the whole thing, who he is, why Ginger is the only ginger cat we see on the ship. So that all came together, and it just seemed like a nice time. And June was, I think, coming off of doing a Power Pack miniseries, in addition to drawing the daily comic strip Mary Worth, which she draws with her husband and inker Roy Richardson. So yeah, it just all came together at a really nice time as Ahoy was gearing up to celebrate for 5 years.
I did a couple weeks ago. I got to read the second issue in this 2-issue series, which wraps up a lot of threads from both series that preceded it, and it is so good, and it is so satisfying and exciting and funny and everything. I really loved it.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are
one thing I really tried to do in that I'm trying to do more and more in my work is if I have a lot to cover, if I have a lot of ground to cover, I still try to leave a lot of room for someone to really get the crap beat out of them.
Yeah.
Or some big sort of action sequence like that hopefully is visceral. And I think I hope I managed to squeeze that in. I think
you did do that, and it made all the difference. Actually, that's a really good piece of advice.
It's harder and harder in modern comics because they've gotten shorter. Like
shorter. It's like less happens on every page because it's more of a movie or TV pacing than a comic book pacing, and it's good. I mean, I like it, but it is harder to fit everything you want in it. But the whole point, I mean, the whole job of creating comics is to figure out what to leave out, because space is just your enemy.
Yeah.
Now, I know one of the things that Ahoy, you guys have done with Ahoy to kind of set it yourself apart from other, publishers is adding that extra material in the background? What, like the stories, the poetry, how did that come to, you know, get, how did you guys think of that idea to include it as a, make the comic book a little more meaty?
When we were just getting started and we could do anything, we did a lot of looking through old comics to just remind ourselves of, are there things that used to be done that aren't done anymore that we might like to revive or learn something from. A couple like we on the back cover, we always put the cover art without the logo and without the copy and price and barcode, just the plain cover art on the back. And that comes from Gold Key Comics in the 60s, which I really loved that about them. And it was like the only thing I loved about them. But, that's entirely stolen from this sort of middling comic book company in the 60s. And but the other thing was, there would, due to like postal regulations, if you did a comic book and you wanted to have subscribers and you wanted to mail out copies and you want to do it as cheaply as possible, you had to have text in there or the post office wouldn't consider you a magazine. So, and which is why they all ended up having letter pages. But before they had letter pages, they would just hire somebody to write a story as fast as possible and as cheaply as possible. And I have started to read 100 of these stories, and I don't know if I've ever finished one.
And they're really short. They're really short.
They're really short, and they're awful. But so the idea was looking at these things, thinking, what if these were good?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we've been trying to do, and I think they are good.
Yeah.
And how do you? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, give a little plug for the 5th anniversary. I came up with the idea of taking those and actually doing a serial with 13 different writers. And I think I hit Grant Morrison at the right time and got them to lead it off with a with a piece that it's brilliant and it's insane and it's about 8 times as long as we asked him for. But we somehow fit it in the back of Project Cryptid #1. And I thought once I got putting this together, and I set myself up as one of the later writers in case the plot went way off the rails and I had to sort of steer it back, which I did a little bit. But I thought the whole thing was going to be a nightmare, just coordinating 13 different writers. And it was fine. Everyone was on time. Some people wrote their stories really quickly. Like people were really enthusiastic about it. Carol Leigh did hers in like 2 days, and it's incredibly dense. Like it's got like, and it's beautifully written. So the whole thing worked out much more easily than I thought it would. And I think the final installment is written by a British writer named Keck W., who's written a couple of things for us. He's written several of the prose stories in the back, 1 or 2 things for Edgar Allan Poe, I think. But he just finishes it off beautifully. He took it and just he made it so funny. At the same time, he was just like wrapping up. He ran roughshod over half of what I did in the previous installment. Like he just like slammed me into the wall. But he did it brilliantly. Like it all worked.
Yeah. There's the title is Partially Naked Came the Corpse, and there was what Exquisite Corpse is. That's the name of the genre, isn't it? Where
I think
round robin story. Somebody starts one, somebody else continues it, somebody else continues it. And then there was a famous one
too. Yeah,
there was a famous one in the 70s. It was a bunch of reporters for Newsday, the newspaper. It tried to do like a cheap mainstream sex novel together, and it was called Naked King the Stranger. And they put it out as a hoax, like under one author's name, and then they revealed it. So there you go. Grant just like plumbing the depths of culture as usual. Illusions no one can possibly care about. But anyway, Stuart, you should do this again someday. you did a great job.
I think, thank you. I'm happy with it. It's, if we were to do it again, I'd want us to figure out a new angle on it somehow. Like it need to have some reason for being. But yeah, I have definitely thought about it because I really enjoyed the experiences. I think I said to you, Tom, it combined writing and editing for me in a way that very few things I've ever done have. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that process and working with the other writers to figure this whole thing out. So yeah, I'd love to do something more like that again.
Oh, and it was like the DC challenge, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that's what I was saying, or the Commandy challenge.
Yeah.
Command challenge, yes, yes.
Oh yeah, that one.
But so now, as a small time publisher, you guys have taken a lot of, I would say, risks. I mean, I think you guys picked up Second Coming, which was dropped by DC. Does being a small publisher allow you the opportunity to do stuff, take those uh, chances and try new stuff? Because you guys put out a plethora of different genre stories.
Mm-hmm. Second Coming never felt like a risk for us because we're a small company. It was a risk. It would have been a risk for a big company with a reputation to protect and deep pockets and stuff. But not really for us. I mean, DC was going to publish it, and there was an outcry. And as far as I know, they didn't not publish it because of the outcry from people who didn't want to see, who expected it to be a story mocking Jesus Christ, which it isn't.
Yeah.
But the reason was that Mark Russell, the writer, and DC sort of mutually decided that they were going to have a rough time doing this together because and they really wanted Mark to be as free as possible to write what he wanted, and they weren't sure they could give that to him. So they were absolute princes and princesses about like helping us, sending us the material, sending us files and stuff, and helping us launch this thing. And it was a really friendly situation on the part of DC and Mark, and then on the part of DC and us.
Yeah, we have. I mean, Tom and I both have friends at DC. We're in touch with people there. It was a very. We were not the only publisher interested in this in the book, but they were once it was all set up, they were very encouraging and helpful at every stage. And yeah, like Tom said, they wanted the book to succeed. They like Mark. They're still working with Mark, and he's an important writer to them. But also, they're just good people, and they like good comics, and they want the comics to be good.
That's exactly right. And there were other publishers interested, and it took a while for us to know that we finally got it. And when we knew, we just celebrated. It was such an exciting thing to learn that book.
I think it probably felt like longer than it was. I think it probably all happened within a few weeks, didn't it? But
probably did, but I sweat like crazy.
So can you talk a little bit about your vetting process for people, for creators who submit stories? Because I mean, you've had books from like right now. I'm blanking, but you've had Mariah McCourt did her what was it, Thorn and Ash?
Ash and Thorn, yeah.
Ash and Thorn, yeah. You've had Paul Constant has done stuff for you. Can you kind of give like an overview of the way you vet, pitches?
There's a shameful amount of luck involved. We're a small company, and we just can't publish that many things every year. We just don't have the resources. So if you get through to us, it's partially because the thing really looks excellent and unique, and partially because you hit us at the right time when we could acquire something. And I've actually gotten to where I tell people who are interested that if we choose your thing, it's a miracle.
Yeah, it's
I hate to say.
It's a small line, and at the beginning, it was a lot of the people who came in were people either Tom or I had worked with before, or people Tom, like Tom, you knew Paul Constant from Seattle journalism circles, I think,
Right. Right.
and you knew he had an interest in comics, and you trusted, and you sort of nurtured him along through the first book, Planet of the Nerds, and now we have another editor, Sarah Litt, who has a whole different set of contacts and a whole different and her own taste. And a lot of the new stuff coming up is going to be hers, actually. So that's that's part of the company just sort of evolving and reaching out and trying to be more diverse, trying to be open to new approaches. At the same time, as Tom says, we do a certain number of books by Tom, we do a certain number of books by Mark Russell, and we only have so many slots per year. So it's tough to break through that sometimes.
So over the past 5 years, what obstacles did you guys face as a small publisher competing in a market that's kind of maybe three big large publishers and then a lot of smaller publishers? What challenges did you face, and how did you overcome those?
Well, one of them is that there used to be, a few big publications and websites that you could go to, and if they ran your story about your thing, a lot of people would see it. And now it feels like there's 1,000 of them with 12 readers each. It's a lot more work. But our publicist, Superfan Promotions, David Hyde, has done amazing work, just getting our word out everywhere. And so it's really more of a problem for him than for us because he does it so well, But and also it's just if you're putting out 4 comics a month and somebody else is putting out 40, it's a little hard to get your voice heard sometimes. But of course, the big, huge, hammer blow was the pandemic. The time we started it, it was a matter of timing.
Yeah, we were about 1.5 years in, and there was that period where Diamond just stopped shipping books, and they had reasons. I mean, they have employees; they had to be careful. But I think that was a big sea change in the whole industry, because that was when everyone realized you don't want to have one distributor, because then one distributor could just unilaterally make that decision, and it affects your entire ability to do business. And it was shortly after that that DC left Diamond, Marvel left Diamond, and now there are a lot more players in that space. We're distributed still by Diamond, but also by Lunar, with whom we have a good relationship, and our book distribution is with Simon & Schuster. That's made my life and the life of Darren Bennett, our production guy, a lot more complicated, but it's better. It just gives us more. It gives us more places to point stores to get our books, and it also puts us much less at the mercy of one distributor, who, again, I'm not second guessing what Diamond did, but the more avenues you have to get your work out there, the less likely something like that is to stop you in your tracks.
Cool. Also, there were a lot of stores that were not open for Diamond to deliver to. So
there were a lot of stores that shouldn't have been open that kind of were too. Yeah, comic stores are basically scrappy little operations run by a few people, and some of them really figured out how to do it too. Some of them were doing curbside, contactless, pick up and things like that. They're the if you had told me when I started out in publishing that at this point in history, comic shops would be a more vital market than bookstores, I would not have believed you. I would have thought you were crazy. But in a way, it's true, because comic shops are not owned by chains. They're not subject to being shut down in big chunks, like the way I think is it Rite Aid that's about to shut down a third of its stores
Right.
or something
Yeah.
like that. That doesn't happen to our industry. The downside is that every store really is run on a shoestring and kept going by the will of its owner. So that's precarious. And it means they don't have a lot of spare money to throw around and take a chance on new projects sometimes. But all in all, it's a remarkably as industries go, it's a survivor in a way I wouldn't have even predicted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I believe it's back in 2020 or 2021. You guys had the one. It was like a one shot that had like the three different stories, and the fans were supposed to vote.
Yes.
Are we? I mean, how did that? I know it didn't probably work out as you planned, but kind of. Are we going to see anything more like that in the future, or something along those lines?
The
That was
story with that
Oh.
is Stuart's won, so we did mine.
I was going to say the story of that was I got completely robbed. The book was called Steel Cage. Yeah, it was basically 3 short pilot stories for different projects, and one of them, Penultiman, became its own series. And yeah, I think we wound up. I mean, creatively, it was great. It was a real chance to try stuff out, and I think we got readers engaged. It wound up, I think, being a lot of money for what we got out of it. You know, like we've been sort of we've talked about doing something like it again, but we'd really have to figure it out. Like we didn't crack that part of the code the first time out, I think, anyway.
Yeah.
And I know one of the other books that I've really enjoyed from you guys is the Edgar Allan Poe kind of anthologies, and you've done like the Snifter of Terror, I pick your favorite Edgar Allan Poe.
after of
Yeah. So how did that kind of idea kind of come from, and how did that kind of work out with the creative teams?
Poe was the perfect sort of host for the horror stories, because he's free and he's not around to object to anything you do. You don't have to pay him and you don't have to listen to him. So that was really nice. And plus he's got this story that I think most people kind of believe, but historians doubt, which is that he just drank himself to death in the gutter, which if it didn't happen that way, we wanted to show it that way because it's funnier. So we didn't really care if we were representing him fairly, but we all love anthologies and little horror comics, and it's just a great comic book tradition. And it was fun to be able to do, and to work with all these different creators and stuff. And I could do it forever. Right now we're doing Project Cryptid, which is a different, and that's with Bigfoot and all the cryptid pals, Loch Ness Monster and Chupacabra and stuff. Sarah Litt created this whole thing and was seeing it through, and I really like it a lot.
Yeah, we've gotten a pretty good response to that one. Obviously, we again, being the size company we are, we don't want to have too many anthologies running at the same time. I think we've talked about bringing Poe back again at some point. We've kind of run through adaptations of his stories pretty thoroughly at this point too. So it'd probably have to have a stronger concentration on original work. But
that doesn't bother me. If you want to adapt like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, you just call the story Edgar Allan Poe's The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh, that's true. See, that's why you're the editor-in-chief. That's that kind of editorial genius that just shines through.
It makes me very fragile.
It makes you fret. Yes, yes, I've noticed that. Yeah.
I cry easily.
Yeah.
So besides the series that you guys have written, do you have a favorite Ahoy series that somebody else has, done for you guys, or one that's kind of stuck out for you?
Well, they all stick out for me. I have a sort of policy against naming favorites because I'm afraid of offending the people I don't name, and I have to work.
Understandable.
It's hard to beat Second Coming. I mean,
That's really hard to beat Second
that's the
Coming.
easy answer. But in the third series, Trinity, which did that just wrap up, or is it wrapping up soon? I can't remember. I think it did. Yeah. The twists that come in on that book near the end of that run are incredible. They're harsh and they're moving and they're wrenching, and Mark's really seeded this whole series very carefully. Like he's and even the little bit at the end of Trinity sets up the next series completely. Like it's really clever, and it's all directly down to that theme of solving problems with violence versus through peaceful means, as represented by Sunstar, the superhero, on the one hand, and Jesus Christ, the Son of God, on the other.
It's kind of about the different kinds of power and what they're useless against.
Yes, it really is. And none of it works all the time. None of it even works most of the time.
Yeah.
But they do learn things from each other, and they have and it's like a discussion being played out in between, throwing planets around or trying to figure out how to raise kids, which is really what the book is about as much as anything.
It is, yeah. It's so great.
Now, kind of looking at the larger picture, where did the name Ahoy for the company, how did that come about? I mean, we're talking about you being around for 5 years, so let's get the whole story.
You've
You asked.
One a lot lately. You've been getting that one a lot lately, Tom.
Yeah, I have done. It's we just. What are the language restrictions on this show?
None.
No. Our publisher, when he was from the time he was in college, which is quite a long time ago, he every holiday time he would throw a party, and it was always a big party, and he had a lot of friends, and it was called the Ahoy Party because when you got there, the activity besides eating and drinking and God knows what else was voting in an election, and the election was Asshole of the Year, AHOY. So this only went on for about 40 years. And Frank Camuso, who's our other friend who started the company with us, and I, we were sort of like henchmen for him in this. We would we would design like ballots and do all these jokey things, and there'd be these big mailings and stuff. And before the internet, it was like a mail-in vote, or unless you're at the party. So there was a lot of like little material attached to it. So the three of us are talking about starting this comic book company, and we're thinking of names, and everybody's shouting out names, and we all hate them except for the ones that we shout out. We're in an impasse, and then Frank goes, Ahoy Comics. And we're both like, of course. It has to be that. It has to be. So it's Asshole of the Year. Just like DC stands for Detective Comics. Asshole of
the Year.
I'm glad to learn that, because if I were the real Stuart Moore, I would already have known. Now that I know that, I'm a little queasy about being associated with this company, but the checks are still clearing. So
Yeah, I was a little I was a little PO'd when I found out you weren't Stuart, but I think I like you.
So
Well, I won't.
where,
I
where,
won't let him out of the closet. Then I won't. I'll just keep it.
so where do you guys see the company in another 5 years, or where would you like to see the company or the as a publishing a publisher of comics?
I'd like to see it existing. I don't know too much beyond that, but I think it will. I think it will exist. I mean, what's to improve? We get to do comics we love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna keep trying to bring in new creative people and you know, expand the roster as much as we're capable of doing. You know, with the size of the company. But yeah, I think. I mean, I think we're kind of on the wrong track. Like I said, Sarah brings a different flavor to the whole thing. And Project Cryptid, as Tom said, really was her baby. That's doing nicely for us. And what's nice about that book too is it has a very different feel to it than the Edgar Allan Poe anthologies, even though it sort of fills the same niche in our lineup. So yeah, we'll keep experimenting with stuff like that, I guess.
Well, I expect you guys to have Mark Russell still writing chapters of Second Coming and the Serial Creatures.
Yes, I think he might be done with Serial. I'm
I
not
think
sure.
he's done
Yeah,
with Stuart,
yeah.
but he can be second coming as long as he wants, as far as I'm concerned. It's
Yeah, he's
Well,
got a bit. He's got at least. I think he's got at least a couple more series in him.
yeah.
yeah. I think 6 was the last I heard, and we just put out 3. So
Yeah, definitely. I've chatted with him on a regular basis, and he says that he has a story that he wants to tell using that title. So
yeah,
Yeah.
we're very lucky to have him and have that.
He's a super nice guy too. He's just great to do.
Absolutely great to do it.
The other book we haven't mentioned really much is Justice Warriors by Matt Bors,
Yes.
who which is an interesting book for us. It's a sort of a social satire about a futuristic city where the police are, shall we say, a little out of control. I think that's fair to say.
That's fair to say.
And Matt is the founder of the Nib the magazine and website. That book's doing really, really well for us in trade paperback.
Right.
It just keeps selling. We're talking with Matt about doing some other stuff too.
So
there'll be a lot
that we can't talk about, but yeah.
Yeah.
And Ben Clarkson's the artist of Justice Warriors, and he brings a tremendous amount to it. And Justice Warriors is really funny. It's like there's a kind of a perfect urban society within the bubble city, and then outside the bubble is where most people live, and they're all dirt poor, and it's called the uninhabited zone. And so the Justice Warriors are the cops who patrol the uninhabited zone, and it's terrific.
I think I've read a couple issues of that when I was looking to just kind of refresh myself with the titles that you guys have published. I think the only one I missed was Guilt or Split.
Guilt, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But I recently talked to Paul Cornell about Con and On, which is a great, very fun book that you guys are putting out and doing, and so I mean,
unique.
Yeah, it's fun because it's you can. It's like he's relaying his experiences as a writer and his con experiences to the page.
He is.
Yeah, it's an interesting series. It follows a sort of a steady large cast of characters going to the same fictionalized version of the San Diego Comic-Con, really, every over a course of, was it about 20 years?
No, it's more like really, yeah.
It's more, yeah. And they all change. Some of some of them are professionals and their careers go well, they don't go well. Some of them are fans who meet up. It's really something, and it's got something to say too. It makes it it's a really interesting piece of work.
I mean, I find that, a lot, not just that book or, Mark's, be it Second Coming or Billionaire Island. I mean, a lot of the books you guys do have, something else to say besides just telling a great story. I guess that's intentional on your part, or just the way you guys are working with the writers on the titles.
Yeah, it's nice to have something kind of meaty and kind of unique and kind of and it is good. I always think if you're going to be articulate, say something,
Yeah, as a writer, I get a little bored if I don't have a little of that meat on the bones. Yeah, that's and that's definitely built in. I mean, that's some of when we go back to Tom and I both working at Vertigo, that was a very important part of those books, and we've tried to carry that through in a slightly more, I wouldn't say lighthearted, but a little more humor-oriented way. Is probably the way to put it.
Our shorthand for what we tell creators is funny vertigo, which is that's the ideal thing to me.
When we started the company 5 years ago, we were kind of advised not to say that out loud. I think because the Vertigo imprint wasn't doing very well.
That situation has changed. It's really well remembered now.
Yeah. And even that wasn't completely fair. I mean, we got Second Coming from that. That was supposed to be a Vertigo book.
Yeah,
it's true.
So, is there anything else about the past 5 years of Ahoy Comics that you guys wanted to mention or think people should know about or may find interesting?
I managed to avoid COVID for 3 years until I got it hosting the Ahoy panel this year at San Diego Con. So I don't know what it's about Ahoy or the world or anything, but that's a little side note. I don't know.
I'm just glad that 5 years is over.
Yes, but can we rest now? Can we take a little break? No, it's fun, and it's the weird thing about comics. I don't even know if you and I have discussed this so much, Tom, but like when we were both at Vertigo, mumble years ago, like actually producing a comic book was a much harder process. It was a much more it took longer, and it was more laborious. You had to actually send pages through Federal Express. You had to get the letter, and now it was actually when I had my brief stint at Marvel at Marvel Nights about 20 years ago that I realized, oh, it's a lot easier to make these things than I thought. And
right, from the editorial end.
Yeah, and it's not any easier than it used to be to make a good one.
Right.
That's still the trick.
Right.
But it is kind of cool that now, like, we can have a company like ours or some of the other mid-sized comics companies that have staff like spread all around, all over the world. We can all collaborate. We can all and it means we can really work with the best people possible, which has been an asset. Ahoy's been all remote from the beginning. Well, except for that you had a little downtown office in Syracuse.
We had an office, but I was the only person in it.
It was about big enough for you. Like, it wasn't a very big.
Yeah.
In fact, it was getting a little too full of comics before you shut it down, I think.
It really was.
Getting a little crowded in there. But that's just a nice thing about doing comics these days. You can I've worked with artists all over the world, and it's easy now. It's that's just it's just a nice.
Faster. You can put a package together, and it's not faster to create, but it's faster once you have the pieces assembled to just put everything together.
Yeah.
And things like lettering is faster.
And how have you guys, as creators, grown in the past 5 years through your experiences with, Ahoy Comics?
Well, you just hope if you keep writing that it gets a little better over time. That's what, and you get a little more confident. But I feel pretty confident.
Yeah, I've sort of been I've split a lot of my time in the last over the last 5 years between my work at Ahoy, both writing and behind the scenes, and writing various kinds of superhero novels, Marvel novels. I did a trilogy of middle grade books in collaboration with Stan Lee before he passed, and those those two things sort of for me sort of feed off each other a little bit. And what it's really gotten me thinking about, it's a little bit like what I was saying about Captain Ginger earlier. I really try and take each scene and really boil it down to what's important viscerally for a one point of view character whenever I can. And I hope that sort of makes whatever I'm writing more urgent and more important to the reader. You don't always succeed, and you have to plan it out well enough at the beginning, or else it seems forced. But that's kind of a that's a principle I've been trying to apply lately.
One thing that leaped out at me writing The Wrong Earth is there's something that happens in the middle of the first series of The Wrong Earth. There's something we learn about that became kind of the linchpin of what the whole series is about. But
yeah.
I didn't know what it was till I got to that panel. Like, sometimes the best stuff can't be in an outline you create early, before you write, because you have to be in the weeds with the characters to really know what it is. And that was a real case of that.
Yeah, it is a cliche that the characters tell you what the story is or where it's going, but it's really true. If you're doing it right, it's really true.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I always try to leave a little room for improvisation in case it's handy.
I do too. At the same time, I need an outline, or else I start to wander. Like I just don't, or and especially when I'm writing prose, if I don't have enough of the thing figured out, my writing deteriorates. Because I'm trying to figure out too many things at once. So in novels, I guess I really do need a strict outline. In comics, I need a strict outline because, as you said earlier, Tom, there are never enough pages. And you can really get yourself in a hole if you're not careful.
Well, years ago, I wrote this comic, Our Man, and that was
yes.
Love
it.
I thought that worked out because for the first time I knew what the ending would be to the whole series. It didn't matter how long it would take me to get there, or how much or how little time they gave me, and it was like a theme I could improvise toward, and I thought that worked. That was a really good way to do it.
Yes.
So as we wrap up here, what does Ahoy have? Are you guys currently offering? Where can people find you on the socials? Where can people find you guys individually on the socials? And what would be your pitch to those who haven't checked out anything from Ahoy? I mean, if they haven't, then I don't know why what rock they're living under.
Right.
If you haven't, I don't know what I can say to you. It's social media. We're still on Twitter.
Yeah, it's a Ahoy Comic Mags on Twitter, Ahoy Comics on Instagram, and I think, just to be confusing, Comics Ahoy on Facebook.
And it also Blue Sky. I think it's Ahoy Comic Mags on Blue Sky. And I'm Tom Peyer on Twitter and on Blue Sky, and I think it's gotten to where that if I have something really funny to say, I'll say it on Blue Sky now. It's such a drag.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I'm Stuart Moore 1 on Facebook and Twitter, and Stuart Moore 01 on Instagram. And yeah, I try try to keep up on those, especially when I have something new coming out, like the new Captain Ginger series, which is hitting right about as we're talking on this very podcast.
And you're on Blue Sky too, right? You're just Stuart Moore, I think.
I think so. I haven't been using it as well as you have. I'm sorry. I know it's one of those things like you should recycle more or something. Like I should use Blue Sky instead of Twitter more, and I just haven't been. But maybe I'll be better in 2024.
Yeah, Bill Oakley, the ex-Simpsons writer, tweeted today. I think it was on Blue Sky, and he was saying, you know how in early days of Twitter, everybody was worried because they fixed the algorithm to give you like this hit of dopamine so that you couldn't ever like want to get off it. He says, well, I think they fixed that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I want to thank you guys for taking the time out this evening. Congratulations on 5 years with Ahoy Comics. As I've said repeatedly this evening, I've enjoyed your books, and I look forward to what you guys have to offer in the future.
I guess we didn't really answer the part of the question where you asked what would we say to people? Why should they try Ahoy Comics if they haven't in the past? And I would say, like, right now we've got these short run miniseries coming out now of The Wrong Earth and Captain Ginger. So those are both good ways to sample the line if you're interested in that. It's not a big commitment. There's also plenty of trade paperbacks in print. Two core volumes of The Wrong Earth and a few spin-offs. 2 volumes of Captain Ginger, 4 volumes of Edgar Allan Poe, 2 volumes, third one about to come out, I think, of Second Coming.
Yep.
So there's plenty of places there's ways to both sample the line or dive in whole if you want. The books are also available, in addition to being in comic shops and bookstores. They're available digitally from Amazon Comixology and also from Omnibus, a new player in that sphere that just launched their web store this week.
Right.
Well, I will encourage everybody to definitely check out and support you guys at their local comic book stores, and we'll continue to follow you guys here at Comic Watch. And as my co-host likes to say, it's a crazy world out there, so do something nice for somebody else and make sure you're reading some good books. Again, thank you guys for taking the time this evening, and when we'll have to not wait 5 years to have you back and talk about what you guys have planned, on the docket for Ahoy.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Chad.
Yep.
Thank you.